Now, when we launched our Facing It Together campaign, the stats showed that 1 in 4 women and around 1 in 7 men in England and Wales will experience some form of domestic abuse in their lifetime. Now, sadly, those figures haven't changed. They're still the same. So if we want this to change, we need to keep raising awareness. And that is why, here at Loose Women, we've continued that conversation over the past year.
I think when it comes to abuse, you know, abuse can happen to anybody. It doesn't have an age limit, it doesn't have a colour. You know, it's just if an abuser wants to find you, they will find you.
When I look back over past relationships, there has been issues that have shown themselves in different forms, from coercive control to intimidation. I very quickly became conditioned that the things I was experiencing were normal, or if not normal, they were my fault.
My dad had been very badly damaged by a very damaged father.
He doesn't want me going out wearing this outfit, this dress. He wants me to change. He wants me to lose weight.
And there are some shocking stats when it comes to people with disabilities. Yeah. Nearly 3 times more likely to experience domestic abuse.
Yeah, it's shocking. But when I first heard that, I was shocked too. And then you start to unpack it and try to understand it. And you can understand quite quickly how easily abuse can take it different forms with disabled women.
I've said that I thought it was my fault that I was being treated in this way and that I'd done something wrong. So I've immediately tried to look in myself to better myself or just not say anything at all.
Very volatile emotionally, very angry, and would do kind of very manipulative things and then love bomb me.
And in my case, my wrists were something that he would use on a regular basis to restrain. That's a way of them feeling that they have control over you.
Yeah.
Just was a very, very controlling person and with a terrible, terrible temper. And to this day, I can't go to the postcode in London.
Every time I do this, I get messages from people saying, I think it's happening to me, or I think it's happening to my daughter or to my son. And that's why continuing this conversation and having these frankly yucky, horrid conversations are so important.
Now, one thing I do want to say about the ladies that work on this programme, when they talk about their own personal experiences, it's not easy. It's quite a difficult thing for them to do, but it's something that they want to do in order to be able to change those patterns and hopefully stop other people from going through the things that they have been through. Don't underestimate that by telling their stories, somehow it's an easy thing for them. It's not. It's a really difficult thing for them to do. And the women that are going to be talking about their stories here this afternoon, it will be, again, difficult for them to do, but I'm very proud of them for doing that, because we'll never stop using our platform to talk about important issues like domestic abuse. And thankfully, conversations are happening on a wider level too. We'll talk a bit more about how that has been executed over the past year, but Denise, you weren't on the show a year ago when we first introduced this campaign. But it is something that you've had experience of.
Indeed. And this was prior to, obviously, my marriages to Tim and subsequently my, lovely husband, Lincoln. But I was in a relationship for many years prior to that. And it was coercive control, not physical control. There were a couple of scuffles, but they were, tussles between the two of us. But mostly it was coercive control from him. And the difference is that you can't see the bruises. The bruises heal in a physical relationship, terrible, terrible, but you can't see the bruises. And in this photo that we used for the Facing It Together campaign, they asked me why I was smiling. And I said, because everything was happening behind the painted smile. So you are putting on this face to the public and indeed to your friends and family that everything is okay, because you're embarrassed, you're mortified, you don't know why you're staying, but you're locked in. So I fell in love with this person who, we'll discuss that love bomb thing that we don't like the sound of, but people know that that's a media term. I fell in love with this incredibly charismatic man, very, very good looking. And I thought thought that my whole life had aligned and this was the person for me. And then, of course, you don't realise what's happening. So he started to chip away at my personality. So personality traits that I thought made me quite popular suddenly became detrimental. And he would say things like, you know, your friends aren't laughing with you, they're laughing at you. You know, when you told that joke that they all laughed at, why did you tell that joke? It was rude. It was just, you know, they were all rolling their eyes at each other, and you start to slowly believe. What they do is, as well, is that they very, very often have a dysfunctional family of their own. And this is sort of a part of narcissistic personality disorder. And that because I was close to my family, bearing in mind probably 3 phone calls a week from a call box because we didn't have mobile phones, I was obsessed with my family. And so they very slowly start to bring you apart. Also, the jealousy that comes, which is unbelievable, is because it's your fault. If I didn't love you this much, it's because I love you so much that you make me like this. So an example of that was before I was on the telly, nobody knew who I was. We were sat in a restaurant together and I was facing the door. The door opened and a couple walked in and we just made eye contact. So I smiled at them and they smiled at me. He turned around and he looked at the guy, and I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but the table went up and he said, "You want my wife?" Right? Well, not my wife, my girlfriend. And,
how did all of these things make you feel?
You can imagine that any normal person listening to that story would say, why did you not just leave? But you are so desperate to change that person, and they make you feel like you are the centre of their life. And the other thing is, a question I'm going to ask some of the ladies in the audience later is, it's very easy to say, why don't you leave? Because but basically they are incredibly manipulative. And in a documentary I saw with my friend Isla Triquet last night that hasn't come out yet about narcissistic personality disorder, with narcissists talking, saying that their desire to hurt that person overrides any fear of the law, any fear of anything. Their buzz, as it were, comes from their desire to hurt.
And, you know, this is this sort of situations that we are talking about this afternoon. And, you know, I know the facts and figures in terms of how impactful people found this when we first did it a year ago. But as a result of doing this, and about you talking about what you went through, Kelle, you met up with the Queen, who's also a big advocate for changes in terms of how we think about domestic abuse and how we deal with domestic abuse.
Yeah, I went with our charity. They were celebrating their anniversary also, and what I will say about Her Majesty is that it wasn't a box-ticking exercise. This is something that she is very, very passionate about and is going to extend way beyond the documentary that she did, which I thought was really informative and captured the voices of many women and captured many aspects of domestic abuse. So continuing to work in the way that we are in terms of raising awareness and continuing the conversation is what's important. It's not about a one-off TV show or a one-off documentary. It's about instigating real change.
Yeah, and that's what we're hoping to do here this afternoon. And as Denise has said, we have got a few of the charities that we've worked with in the audience. We are going to be asking them some questions a bit later on in the show. And you may well have noticed that we've been flashing up the number for the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, and we will continue to do that throughout today's show. It is free, it is confidential, and it's available 24 hours a day. Now, of course, if you are in immediate danger right now, please always call 999. And we're going to be talking about some tough topics throughout the show, but some really important ones. So if you're affected in any way by any of the things that we talk about today, we'll also be sharing our own helpline as well, which you can also see on the screen now.